Good evening, everyone. Tonight's video is about Duroc or Everglide stabilizers. They come in all sorts of pretty colors, such as these pink ones I have here, and they're very smooth. However, they have a slight problem. They're a little bit rattly. Here I have a PCB with some Duroc stabilizers on the space bar. You can see that it's fairly rattly. It's not terrible, but it's certainly not ideal. Now the reason for that is partially because of the way the sliders on the inside of these stabilizers are made. So let's take a closer look at one of these and compare it to an old school cherry stabilizer slider. And we'll see what's the difference and what we can do about it. So the first thing and the main thing to notice here is when you look inside of the passage where the wire passes, you'll notice that it's open and free from any obstructions. Well, if we look at an old school cherry stabilizer slider, we'll find something different. Now, I don't know how well you can see, but there's a thin piece of plastic to my right side of the opening. And that piece of plastic is crushed by the stabilizer wire when you insert it. And it sort of serves to take up some of the extra space and make the stabilizer wire less rattly. Let me grab another one of these so you can see another example. Now this is from a keyboard that I was using, so the stabilizer wire was already in there and it already crushed that little piece of extra plastic. Do you see that little plastic ridge? That doesn't exist in the Duroc stabilizers. At least the ones that I have don't have it. And this creates more rattle because the wire fits more loosely inside of that opening. So one thing that can be done about that is a little technique that I came up with myself, and I'll demonstrate it right here. What we're trying to do is create a little bit of extra thin material of plastic that will sort of fill up that empty space. So I'm actually going to take my soldering iron with this semi-fine tip, and right at the point where you see this corner right here, it's a little bit delicate, so I need just a moment here to take out my contacts so I can see what I'm doing more clearly up close. Okay. So right at the corner here of this corner is where I'm going to poke my little hole with my soldering iron. And I'm going to poke with the soldering iron just until I feel it start to break through to the other side. Just barely. Now, we'll see what that did on the inside. So I didn't go quite far enough. I need to go a little bit farther in. Okay. See that bubble of thin plastic that got created by the heat of the soldering iron melting through the side of the slider? I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So now we have this thin plastic excess material in there that's going to help hold the stabilizer wire more snugly. And it ends up being very thin because of the way that it gets melted by the soldering iron. And I have my soldering iron set to 400 degrees for this. So now I'm going to do the other slider, and I'll show you the difference that it makes. Now make sure to clean your tip of your soldering iron after you do this, because you'll get some melted plastic on there. Okay, let's see how we ended up. Did we get some material protruding in? Okay, we did. Okay, now the next step is take a razor blade and carefully shave off the material that you've just melted with your soldering iron, the excess material that sort of mushroomed out around the edges. So just carefully shave that off with a razor blade or an X-Acto knife, flush with the side. We don't want to create any binding here. We'll do that on both sides. We'll do the other slider. Okay. Now these sliders are ready to install. Now just give me 1 second here. Put my contact lens back in. Now that I'm done with the up close work. Now let's change these sliders out with the ones that I was using, and you'll be able to hear the difference. Plenty of rattle, right? Now I'm very soon going to build an entire keyboard with stabilizers that have been modified this way as a sort of a proof of concept on a larger scale. But I've already tested it on one stabilizer at a time. Okay. Now we'll take our modified ones. Now when we insert the wire, you're going to notice that oops. I think let's see here. Did I miss something? Okay. So when we insert the stabilizer, oh, I was putting it in backwards. When we insert the stabilizer wire, we'll notice that it fits tighter, and we're going to have to push through that little bit of melted plastic that we created in that opening. So it's going to be a tighter fit, you'll notice. and initially it's going to feel too tight, and I'll show you what we do about that. So you push through that piece of plastic, and then what we have to do is we have to work the stabilizer up and down a few times. So what that'll do is that'll crush that excess plastic. And it's actually better to do this with the stabilizer mounted. And it's also better if I don't put the stabilizer together upside down. But yeah. So it's actually better to do this part with the stabilizer mounted to the PCB. Okay. Let's go ahead and screw this on. Then we'll just kind of work the stabilizer up and down a little bit to make sure that extra plastic that melted out into that opening is getting crushed sufficiently so that it's not blocking the free movement of the stabilizer. But the whole thing that we're aiming to do here is to kind of mimic that thin bit of plastic that Cherry used to, I don't know if they still do, but that Cherry used to put inside the stabilizer sliders. I'm just going to take my little 4-prong grabber and I'm just going to work the stabilizer up and down, all the way up and all the way down, make sure that it moves properly. Okay, should be ready now. Now let's see if we can hear a difference after making that change. The rattle's gone. So as you can tell, there's dramatically less rattle, so it sounds more like an OG Cherry stabilizer now. I haven't lubed it yet either, so this is even without grease. Doesn't that sound good? So there's the modification. I hope you find it useful, and we'll see you next time.